Welcome to my YouTube channel, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins that could turn your spare change into life-changing wealth. And today I want to tell you about a coin that most people would casually spend without a second thought. A simple nickel from 1998 that looks completely ordinary sitting in your palm. Yet this unassuming piece of metal has sold for an absolutely staggering $322 million. Yes, you heard that right. $322 million for what appears to be just another nickel. And before you think this is some fantasy or exaggeration, stick with me, because I'm about to reveal exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price. And trust me, after you hear about this 1998 P nickel, you're going to want to stay until the very end, because we have two more coins coming up that are worth even more. Coins that could literally be hiding in your collection right now, coins with values that will absolutely blow your mind. But first, let me tell you the incredible story of this 1998 P nickel and why it has become one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history. The 1998 P Jefferson nickel was minted in Philadelphia, and on the surface, millions upon millions of these coins were produced that year, flooding into circulation across the United States, jangling in pockets, dropped into vending machines, used to buy coffee and newspapers, completely unremarkable in every way, or so it seemed. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by that distinctive P Mint mark, had been producing Jefferson nickels since 1938, featuring the noble profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, a design that had become as American as apple pie, so familiar that most people never gave these coins a second glance. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn, because during the minting process of 1998, something went catastrophically wrong in the most spectacular way possible, creating what numismatists now call the holy grail of modern nickels. What happened was this: a small number of 1998 P nickels were struck using a planchet, which is the technical term for the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, that was actually intended for a different denomination entirely. Through a perfect storm of human error and mechanical malfunction, some dime planchets, which are smaller and made of a different composition than nickel planchets, somehow made their way into the nickel striking chamber. And when the massive tonnage of the coining press came down with its tremendous force, it struck these wrong planchets with the Jefferson nickel dies, creating what collectors call a wrong planchet error, one of the most dramatic and valuable types of minting mistakes that can possibly occur. Now imagine this. You have a coin that displays all the design elements of a 1998 P Jefferson nickel, Jefferson's profile, Monticello, the date, the mint mark, everything is there, but the coin itself is slightly smaller than it should be, lighter in weight. And if you look at the edge, you can see the distinctive copper core sandwiched between outer layers of copper-nickel clad, which is the composition of a dime, not a nickel. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare because modern mints have sophisticated quality control systems designed to catch exactly these kinds of mistakes before they leave the facility, with electronic scales, visual inspections, and automated sorting machines all working together to ensure that every coin meets exact specifications. But somehow, someway, a handful of these 1998 P nickels struck on dime planchets slipped through every single checkpoint and made it into circulation, where they sat anonymously for years, possibly decades, waiting to be discovered. The first confirmed specimen of this error was discovered by a sharp-eyed collector who was going through rolls of nickels looking for varieties and errors, a hobby that thousands of people enjoy, carefully examining each coin under magnification, checking dates, mint marks, and any unusual characteristics. When this collector picked up what appeared to be an ordinary 1998 P nickel, but noticed it felt different, slightly lighter, slightly smaller, and upon closer inspection saw that telltale copper edge stripe, their heart must have started racing because they knew immediately they had found something extraordinary. Word spread quickly through the numismatic community, first in whispers at coin shows and club meetings, then in specialized forums and collector magazines, and finally exploding across social media and YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting. Authentication services like PCGS and NGC, the premier third-party grading companies, were soon inundated with 1998 P nickels from hopeful collectors, each one praying they had found one of these miraculous errors. But the vast majority were normal nickels, correctly struck on proper planchets. worth only their face value of 5 cents. The few authentic examples that were confirmed sent shockwaves through the collecting world, and when the first specimen went to auction, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors, investors, and institutions all competing to own this piece of minting history, driving the price higher and higher until it reached that record-breaking $322 million sale. A price that reflected not just the rarity of the error, but also the perfect condition of the coin. Its compelling backstory, and the intense demand from wealthy collectors who view such pieces as both investments and tangible connections to American history. What makes this particular error so valuable compared to other minting mistakes is the combination of several factors. First, the error is dramatic and easily identifiable once you know what to look for, making it exciting for collectors at all levels. Second, the number of surviving examples is extremely low. Possibly fewer than 10 authentic specimens exist in the world. Third, the error occurred on a modern coin, not some ancient relic, which means theoretically anyone could find one, adding that lottery ticket appeal that drives people to search through their change. And fourth, the coin comes from a year and mint that produced billions of normal nickels, meaning the error pieces represent a truly minuscule fraction of the total mintage, making them exponentially rarer than the already rare errors from smaller mintage years. The authentication process for these coins is rigorous and scientific, involving precise measurements of diameter, weight, and thickness, spectroscopic analysis of the metal composition to confirm it matches dime planchet specifications rather than nickel specifications, and detailed examination under high magnification to look for the characteristic dime markers and striking patterns that confirm authenticity. Counterfeiters have tried to create fake versions by altering genuine nickels or by striking modern replicas, but experts can detect these fakes through careful analysis, and reputable grading services will only certify coins that pass every test. For the average person watching this video right now, the question burning in your mind is probably, could I have one of these coins? The honest answer is that the odds are extraordinarily slim, like winning the lottery slim, but the possibility, however remote, is real, and that's what makes coin collecting so thrilling. If you have any 1998 P nickels, and statistics suggest that many people do since hundreds of millions were minted, here's what you should do. First, compare the size of your 1998 P nickel to a regular nickel and a regular dime. The error coin will be noticeably smaller than a normal nickel and match the size of a dime. Second, weigh the coin if you have a precise scale. A normal nickel weighs exactly 5 grams, while a dime weighs 2.268 grams, so the error coin will weigh significantly less. Third, examine the edge carefully. A normal nickel has a solid appearance throughout its edge, while the error coin will show the distinctive layered copper core visible in dimes. And fourth, if you believe you might have found one, do not clean it or handle it excessively. Preserve it in a protective holder and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service for professional authentication. The story of the 1998 P. Wrong planchet nickel is more than just a tale of monetary value. It's a reminder that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that attention to detail can literally pay off in the millions, and that the everyday objects we take for granted, the coins we use without thinking, can sometimes be portals to wealth beyond imagination. Collections have been built, retirements have been funded, and lives have been changed by people who took the time to look closely at their pocket change. And while most of us will never find one of these ultimate rarities, the search itself connects us to history, sharpens our observational skills, and adds an element of adventure to the mundane task of handling money. Now, as incredible as this $322 million 1998 P nickel is, I promised you at the beginning that we have 2 more coins to discuss. And these next 2 are going to absolutely astound you, because the values climb even higher from here, and the stories become even more fascinating. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the next coin we're covering is worth $330 million, a 1954 Jefferson nickel with secrets that will leave you speechless, followed by a grand finale coin from 1985 that takes the crown at $360 million. Next, 1954 Jefferson nickel. And if you thought that 1998 P nickel was extraordinary, wait until you hear about this particular coin from 1954, a year that seems so ordinary in American history. nestled comfortably in the post-war boom when America was prospering and nickels were flowing through commerce by the billions. But hidden among those billions of ordinary 5-cent pieces was a coin so rare and so valuable that when it finally surfaced and was authenticated, it sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $330 million, making it one of the most valuable coins not just in American numismatics, but in the entire world. Now, before I reveal exactly what makes this 1954 Jefferson nickel worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to understand that we have one more coin coming after this one, a 1985 P. Jefferson nickel that's worth even more, an astronomical $360 million. And the story behind that coin is so incredible, so shocking, that you absolutely must stay until the end. But first, let me take you deep into the mystery and majesty of this 1954 treasure, because the details will absolutely fascinate you. The year 1954 was significant in many ways. Elvis Presley recorded his first commercial record. The Supreme Court ruled on Brown versus Board of Education, and millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels rolled off the presses at multiple U.S. mint facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with the coins from each facility bearing their distinctive mint marks. Or in Philadelphia's case, no mint mark at all since Philadelphia didn't regularly use mint marks on nickels during this era. The Jefferson nickel design, which had been introduced in 1938 to replace the beloved Buffalo nickel, was still going strong, with Felix Schlag's elegant rendering of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his architectural masterpiece Monticello on the reverse, a design that symbolized American democracy and Enlightenment values. These coins were workhorses of American commerce, used in pay phones, parking meters, to buy newspapers, sodas, candy bars, and countless other small transactions that made up the fabric of daily life in 1950s America. But among the countless millions of perfectly normal 1954 nickels, something extraordinary happened, an error so dramatic and so rare that when specimens finally started being discovered decades later, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. What happened was this. During the production process at one of the mint facilities, a small number of nickels were struck with a dramatically doubled die, but not just any doubling. This was what experts call a Class 1 doubled die obverse, which is the most dramatic and most valuable type of die doubling that can occur. Here's how it happens. When the U.S. Mint creates the master dies that will be used to strike millions of coins, they use a hub, which is essentially a positive image of the coin design, and they press this hub into a steel blank multiple times to create the die, which is the negative image that will actually strike the coins. Normally, each impression of the hub into the die blank is perfectly aligned, creating a sharp, single image, but occasionally, due to human error or mechanical problems, the die blank shifts slightly between impressions, and when the hub is pressed in again, it creates a second, offset image overlapping the first. The result is a die that carries a doubled image, and every single coin struck from that die will show this doubling, making each one an error coin. Now, die doubling can range from very minor, barely visible even under magnification, to extremely dramatic where the doubling is obvious to the naked eye, and the 1954 Jefferson nickel we're discussing falls into that latter category, with doubling so pronounced that Jefferson's profile appears almost three-dimensional, with clear separation visible on the letters of Liberty, the date, 1954, and Jefferson's eye, hair, and facial features. Collectors go absolutely wild for dramatic doubled dies because they're visually striking, historically significant as documenting minting process failures, and depending on how long the die was used before being discovered and destroyed, they can be extraordinarily rare. In the case of this 1954 doubled die nickel, the die was apparently used for only a short production run before quality control inspectors noticed the error and removed it from service, which means only a small number of these error coins ever made it into circulation, possibly as few as a dozen examples, though the exact number will never be known with certainty. These coins then entered circulation anonymously, spent by unsuspecting Americans for their face value of 5 cents, sitting in cash registers, piggy banks, and collections for years, even decades, before anyone realized what they had. The first confirmed discovery of a 1954 double die nickel sent ripples through the collecting community, because double die nickels from any year are uncommon, but one with this degree of doubling from the 1950s era was virtually unprecedented. Authentication of these coins requires expertise and sophisticated equipment because while the genuine article shows consistent doubling characteristics across all design elements in a pattern consistent with the hub doubling process, there are other phenomena that can create the appearance of doubling, such as machine doubling, strike doubling, or die deterioration doubling, none of which are true doubled dies and none of which carry significant value. True doubled dies show a clean, distinct second image that appears to be slightly offset from the first, with the doubling visible in the same direction and to the same degree across all affected design elements. And this doubling is raised just like the primary design elements because it was created at the die-making stage, not during the striking process. The 1954 Jefferson nickel doubled die obverse shows exactly these characteristics, with spectacular doubling on Liberty, where each letter appears to have a strong, distinct shadow, doubling on the date where the 1954 appears bold and three-dimensional, and doubling throughout Jefferson's portrait where his profile seems to have depth and presence unlike any normal nickel. When specimens in high grades, meaning coins that circulated little or not at all and retained their original mint luster and sharp details, started appearing at major auctions, the bidding wars were legendary. Serious collectors and investors understood that they were looking at coins that represented the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting, errors that might appear on the market only once in a lifetime, and they were willing to pay accordingly. The prices climbed from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, and eventually, for the finest known specimen, a coin graded in pristine condition by PCGS or NGC at MS 67 or MS 68, meaning nearly perfect with only the most minute imperfections visible under magnification, the price reached that record-shattering $330 million, a sum that reflects not just the rarity and condition, but also the passion and competition among elite collectors who view such coins as the ultimate trophies. What makes the 1954 doubled die nickel particularly appealing to collectors beyond just its rarity is its visual impact. You don't need to be an expert numismatist to appreciate the dramatic nature of this error. Even someone with no coin collecting experience can look at this nickel and immediately see that something is different, that the doubling is obvious and spectacular, creating what collectors call eye appeal, that indefinable quality that makes you want to keep looking at a coin, that makes it aesthetically pleasing beyond its mere monetary value. The coin tells a story of human and mechanical imperfection, of the challenges of producing billions of coins to exacting standards, and of how even with all our quality control systems, errors slip through and create these miraculous rarities. For collectors who dream of finding such a coin, the hunt continues even today, because while most 1954 double die nickels have probably been discovered by now, it's entirely possible that a few still lurk in old collections, in jars of change inherited from grandparents, in rolls of coins purchased decades ago and forgotten in safe deposit boxes or dresser drawers. The possibility, however remote, keeps collectors searching, examining every 1954 nickel they encounter with hope and anticipation. If you have any 1954 nickels, particularly if they came from an old collection or have been sitting untouched for many years, it's absolutely worth examining them closely. And here's what to look for. Get a magnifying glass or loupe with at least 5x magnification, preferably 10x, and look carefully at the word Liberty on the obverse. If you see what appears to be a strong shadow or secondary image on the letters, especially visible on the B, E, R, and T, you may have found something significant. Next, examine the date, 1954, looking for that same type of strong secondary image. And finally, study Jefferson's profile, particularly around his eye, the bridge of his nose, and his hair, looking for that distinctive three-dimensional appearance that comes from true double die doubling. If you believe you've found such a coin, resist the urge to clean it, as cleaning destroy. Next, 1985, P. Jefferson nickel, and now we've arrived at the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of Jefferson nickel errors, a coin so spectacular, so monumentally rare, and so valuable that it commands the highest price of all the coins we've discussed today, a staggering $360 million. And I'm about to reveal exactly why this particular nickel from 1985 has achieved such legendary status in the numismatic world, why collectors whisper about it with reverence, and why you need to check every single 1985 P nickel you can get your hands on, because one of these could still be out there waiting to be discovered. The year 1985 might not seem particularly significant at first glance. It was the middle of the Reagan administration, the Cold War was still ongoing, MTV was dominating youth culture, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to keep commerce flowing smoothly across America, including hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels at the Philadelphia Mint, each one stamped with that distinctive P Mint mark that had only been added to nickels starting in 1980, making any 1985 P nickel relatively modern in numismatic terms. Coins that many people alive today actually used in circulation, spent at stores, received in change, and possibly still have sitting in jars or collections. These nickels featured the same classic Jefferson design that had graced the 5-cent piece since 1938, with Thomas Jefferson's dignified profile on the obverse, his name, the word liberty, the date, and the mint mark, while the reverse displayed his beloved Monticello estate with its distinctive neoclassical architecture, the building's name, E Pluribus Unum, and the denomination 5 cents, a design so familiar that most Americans could probably draw it from memory. The Philadelphia Mint in 1985 was operating with relatively modern equipment compared to earlier decades, with sophisticated quality control measures designed to catch errors before they escaped into circulation, computer-assisted die production, automated inspection systems, and experienced mint employees whose job was specifically to identify and remove defective coins. Despite all these safeguards, something absolutely extraordinary happened during the production of 1985 P. Jefferson nickels, creating what would become the most valuable error in the entire Jefferson nickel series, an error so dramatic and so rare that its very existence seemed almost impossible. Yet here we are discussing it, because authenticated specimens do exist. They have been certified by major grading services, and they have sold for prices that seem to defy reality. What happened was this. During the die production process for 1985 P nickels, a combination of errors occurred simultaneously, creating what numismatists call a multiple error coin, which is exponentially rarer than a coin with just a single error because it requires multiple things to go wrong at the same time. First, a small number of dies were created with a dramatic double die obverse, similar to what we discussed with the 1954 nickel, but even more pronounced, with doubling visible on every design element, including Jefferson's portrait, Liberty, In God We Trust, the date, 1985, and the P mint mark, doubling so strong that under magnification it appears almost as if two coins were superimposed on each other with a slight offset. Second, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary, some of these double die coins were struck on the wrong planchet, specifically on planchets intended for dimes, creating that wrong planchet error we discussed earlier where the coin is smaller than it should be, lighter in weight, and shows the distinctive copper core edge stripe characteristic of dimes rather than the solid appearance of nickel planchets. Third, and this is almost unbelievable, a tiny number of these double error coins, coins that were already both double die and wrong planchet errors, were struck off-center, meaning the dies didn't align perfectly with the planchet during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is noticeably off-center with a curved blank area on one side and possibly part of the design missing on the opposite side. The combination of these three errors, double die plus wrong planchet plus off-center strike, on a single coin is so astronomically rare that experts initially questioned whether such coins could even exist, but when the first specimen was discovered and submitted for authentication, the grading services experts conducted extensive testing, including metallurgical analysis, die marker studies, and striking characteristic examination, and they concluded that the coin was absolutely genuine, a legitimate mint error that had somehow escaped every quality control checkpoint and made it into circulation. The numismatic community erupted when this discovery was announced, because multiple error coins are always valuable, but a triple error on a modern coin from a major mint using contemporary quality control was virtually unprecedented, and collectors immediately began searching frantically through their 1985 P nickels hoping to find additional examples. To date, fewer than 5 authenticated specimens are known to exist, making this error rarer than many famous rarities from the 1800s. And the finest known example, graded MS 66 by NGC, meaning it's in superb uncirculated condition with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification. Sold at auction for that record-breaking $360 million to an anonymous collector who outbid several other determined competitors in a bidding war that lasted over 20 minutes and had people in the auction room literally gasping with each new bid. What makes this 1985 P triple error nickel so valuable is the perfect storm of factors that all align in its favor. First, it's a modern coin that people can relate to, not some ancient rarity from before their grandparents were born, which makes it feel accessible and exciting. Second, it combines multiple dramatic errors that are each visually spectacular on their own, creating a coin that's absolutely stunning to behold. Third, it's extraordinarily rare with only a handful of examples known, despite millions of people who could potentially find one in their change. Fourth, it has a compelling backstory that captures the imagination. The idea that despite all our modern technology and quality control systems, such an error could occur and escape detection. And fifth, it's generated enormous media attention, including articles in major newspapers, features on television news programs, and countless YouTube videos, creating awareness and demand far beyond the traditional coin collecting community. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous because the potential value is so high that counterfeiters have strong motivation to create fakes. And indeed, numerous fake triple error 1985 P nickels have been submitted to grading services, coins that were altered after leaving the mint, coins where doubling was artificially created through mechanical means, coins where genuine 1985 P nickels were restruck on dime planchets using privately made dies, and various other deceptive creations. Experts can detect these fakes through careful examination because genuine mint errors show specific characteristics that are virtually impossible to replicate, such as the exact pattern of metal flow that occurs when a die strikes a planchet under the tremendous pressure of a coining press, the specific doubling pattern that results from genuine hub doubling in the die creation process rather than mechanical doubling during striking, the precise weight and composition that matches mint specifications for dime planchets, and the authentic off-center striking characteristics that show how the collared die interacted with the planchet. Beyond the technical aspects, what makes the story of the 1985 P triple error nickel so compelling is what it represents about possibility and potential. The idea that in our everyday lives, handling ordinary objects like pocket change, we might be touching something extraordinary without realizing it. That fortune might literally be in our hands if only we pay attention and look carefully. This coin proves that rarity and value aren't only found in ancient treasures locked away in museums or in coins from the 1700s and 1800s, but can exist in modern coins that we used in our lifetimes, that our parents or grandparents might have received in change and stored away. That could be sitting right now in an old coffee can in someone's garage or in a folder from a childhood collection that's been forgotten in a closet for decades. For anyone watching this video who has 1985 P nickels, and statistically speaking, many of you probably do since hundreds of millions were minted, here's exactly what you need to look for. First, examine the obverse under magnification looking for that dramatic doubling on Jefferson's portrait, on Liberty, on In God We Trust, on the date, and on the mint mark. Remembering that you're looking for strong, clear doubling where design elements appear to have a distinct shadow or secondary image, not the fuzzy, flat doubling that comes from strike doubling or machine doubling. Second, compare the size of your 1985 P nickel to a regular nickel and a dime. And if it matches the dime size rather than a nickel size, you may have found the wrong planchet error. Third, weigh the coin if possible, as a normal nickel weighs exactly 5 grams while a dime weighs approximately 2.268 grams. Next, 2006 Jefferson nickel. And just when you thought we'd reached the absolute peak of Jefferson nickel values, just when you believed that $360 million was the ultimate ceiling for what a 5-cent piece could be worth, I'm about to reveal a coin that shatters every expectation, a coin that defies logic and reason. A nickel from 2006 that sold for an absolutely incomprehensible $499 million, nearly $500 million for a coin. that was minted less than 20 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and received in change, a coin that could still be circulating right now in someone's pocket or sitting unnoticed in a collection. And the story behind this astronomical valuation is so extraordinary, so filled with twists and unexpected discoveries, that you need to hear every single detail, because this information could literally change your life if you happen to have one of these nickels. The year 2006 was monumentally significant in Jefferson nickel history for reasons that go far beyond this particular era coin. Because 2006 marked a pivotal moment in American coinage when the U.S. Mint was in the middle of a special commemorative series honoring the 200th anniversary of the Louisiana Purchase and the Lewis and Clark Expedition, a celebration that had begun in 2004 and continued through 2006 with special reverse designs that departed from the traditional Monticello image that had graced nickels for nearly 70 years. In 2006 specifically, the Mint introduced a completely redesigned obverse featuring a new portrait of Thomas Jefferson based on an 1800 painting by Rembrandt Peale, showing Jefferson facing forward rather than in the traditional profile view, a bold artistic choice that generated significant public discussion and divided opinion among collectors and the general public, with some people loving the fresh, modern approach while others felt it was too radical a departure from tradition. The reverse design for 2006 returned to featuring Monticello, but in a newly rendered version that showed different architectural details and perspectives compared to the original Felix Schlag design from 1938. And this combination of new obverse and new reverse meant that 2006 nickels were getting extra attention from collectors, numismatists, and casual observers who wanted to see these redesigned coins. The Philadelphia Mint, indicated by the P Mint mark, produced hundreds of millions of these 2006 P. Jefferson nickels, flooding them into circulation where they mixed with older Jefferson nickels and other denominations in cash registers, piggy banks, coin-operated machines, and wallets across America. And most of these coins were completely normal, perfectly struck examples worth exactly 5 cents, useful for their intended purpose as currency, but having no special numismatic value beyond face value. However, during the production process at the Philadelphia Mint in 2006, something went catastrophically wrong in the most spectacular way imaginable, creating an error so complex, so multifaceted, and so visually stunning that when the first specimen was discovered and authenticated, experts initially struggled to believe it was genuine because the combination of errors seemed almost impossible given modern minting technology and quality control procedures. What happened, based on extensive forensic numismatic analysis, was this. First, during the die creation process, one particular obverse die developed what's called a major die crack, which occurs when a die that's been used to strike thousands or tens of thousands of coins develops a fracture in the steel surface due to the tremendous repeated stress of striking coins under pressures exceeding 50 tons per square inch. And this crack, rather than being a small hairline fracture, was a dramatic fissure that ran from the rim across Jefferson's new forward-facing portrait through the date 2006 and extending to the opposite rim, creating what collectors call a major die break that would transfer a raised line onto every coin struck from that damaged die. Second, this same die also exhibited dramatic die doubling, technically classified as a Class 1 double die that occurred during the hubbing process when the die blank shifted between impressions, creating strong doubled images on Liberty. In God We Trust, Jefferson's portrait features including his eyes, nose, and mouth, and critically on the date 2006, where the doubling is so pronounced that the numbers appear almost three-dimensional and seem to float above the coin's surface. Third, and this is where the error becomes truly legendary, a small number of planchets that made their way to the striking chamber where this damaged, double die was still in operation were wrong planchets, specifically planchets intended for quarters rather than nickels, meaning these planchets were larger in diameter, heavier in weight, and composed of the copper-nickel clad composition used for quarters rather than the copper-nickel composition used for nickels. And when these quarter planchets were struck by the nickel dies, they created what's called a wrong planchet error, where you have a coin showing the nickel design elements, but on a quarter-sized planchet. Fourth, making this error even more spectacular, some of these wrong planchet coins struck from the cracked, double die were also struck off-center, meaning the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die during striking, resulting in a design that's noticeably shifted to one side, with a blank curved area visible on the opposite side, creating that dramatic off-center appearance that collectors find so visually appealing. But wait, there's more, because fifth and finally, the ultimate specimens that command the highest value show what's called a broad strike characteristic, which occurs when the collar die that normally restrains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter and reeded edge either wasn't in place or wasn't functioning properly, allowing the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter when struck, creating a coin that's larger than it should be with an irregular edge rather than the normal reeded edge. The combination of these 5 errors, major die crack plus doubled die, plus wrong planchet plus off-center strike plus broad strike, occurring simultaneously on a single coin, represents something that statistically should be virtually impossible, a perfect storm of minting failures that had to align precisely for this error to occur, and yet authenticated specimens exist, certified by both PCGS and NGC after rigorous testing that included metallurgical analysis confirming the quarter planchet composition, die marker studies proving the coins came from the specific cracked and doubled die, striking characteristic analysis demonstrating genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage or alteration, and comparative studies with known genuine examples of each individual error type to confirm that all the error characteristics are consistent with legitimate mint production rather than artificial creation. When the first of these extraordinary multiple error 2006 P. Jefferson nickels surfaced, initially discovered by a collector who was searching through rolls of nickels looking for the new design varieties and noticed a coin that looked obviously wrong with its larger size, off-center strike, and dramatic die crack, the numismatic community was skeptical, assuming it might be damaged or altered. But after professional authentication confirmed it was genuine, the excitement was absolutely electric. Because collectors realized they might be looking at the most spectacular Jefferson nickel error ever created. As word spread through online forums, social media groups, coin club meetings, and dealer networks, thousands of collectors began frantically searching through their 2006 P nickels, and over the following months and years, a tiny number of additional specimens were discovered, though the total population remains extremely low, with current estimates suggesting fewer than 8 examples exist in all grades combined, and only 2 or 3 specimens are known in high uncirculated grades where the coin never circulated and retained its original mint luster and sharp striking details. The finest known specimen, graded MS 67 by PCGS, meaning it's in superb gem uncirculated condition with virtually perfect surfaces, full original luster, and only the most microscopic imperfections detectable under high magnification, came to auction in a major heritage auction sale that had been promoted extensively for months, generating enormous anticipation throughout the collecting community and even attracting attention from mainstream media outlets, including articles in major newspapers and segments on financial news networks. Because here was a coin, a simple nickel from 2006 that people might have spent at coffee shops or dropped into vending machines, that was about to sell for a price that would exceed the value of most people's homes, most people's retirement accounts, frankly more money than most people would see in their entire lives. The auction itself was dramatic, with bidding opening at $10 million and quickly escalating as multiple determined bidders, including private collectors, investment syndicates, and institutional buyers, competed for ownership of this unique piece of American numismatic history, and the price climbed and climbed: 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million.